Hey patrons, today I thought I might do something a little bit different in that I haven't done a whole lot of showing you guys the tools I use to make this stuff. Every month we do the workshop walkthrough and I'll show you what I'm working on, but it's few and far between that I show you some of the tools that are involved with these projects. So I thought maybe today, for a change of pace, I might show you my Tower of Doom, which is a lot of the important stuff that's needed for various parts of projects. Broken down, I like it right here because like my desk is right here, so I can reach pretty much anything. We're heavy coffee drinkers in the house, so we save these Cafe Bustelo cans, which, by the way, if you like cheap, good coffee, this is good stuff. I've filled it with various types of scissors, junk shears, fine fabric shears, eyelash trimming shears. Oops, there they go. Along with pretty much all of my magic markers in various colors, black, silver, red, which, as you might not know, but like, you want at least 3 colors of magic marker when you're marking stuff, because on most fur, black magic marker's fine. On black fur, it won't show up, so you use the silver paint pen, or whatever gives you the most consistent line. I use a paint pen. And then for some things, like, there can be some dark grays where silver or black don't show up very well. So it's just easier to use like a red or a bright neon green paint pen or something. Neon green's a good one to go with if you're not colorblind. Let's see what else. I got another one full of my clay tools right here, which various shapes and sizes of metal things. Nice box cutter. Oh shit, that came right out. I have a very, very sharp, like scalpel sharp X-Acto knife that I have made a. It's so sharp it cut through its guard, so I made a very super ghetto one by gluing 2 pieces of balsa wood together and then taping around the outside. But hey, so far I haven't cut myself open, which was great. Chip brush, which is very necessary for when you're making molds out of plaster of Paris. You can brush all the little chips off of stuff. Let's see what else we got here. Oh, we got a couple of chemicals. We've got like Plasti Paste, which is a smooth-on product. It's actually, I think I've got a good example of what it can do. It turns into similar to plaster of Paris. It's like for the hard exteriors of molds, but it's like you could run over this stuff. Excuse the fuzz on it, but like you could see the rubber mold here, and then this stuff is just ridiculous. Like the problem with it is because people will smudge it on and it's kind of thick. You can see it gets all these little burrs on it, and holy shit, they're sharp. So like you need a pair of rubber gloves to handle this shit, or you need to just have cut your hands up so badly in the past that you've developed damage resistance 5 towards piercing weapons, such as I have. What else we got? Ooh, spray mat. This stuff is super, super good. If you've ever painted before, you recognize this stuff. This is just to give a protective varnish coat over painted stuff that isn't going to be too abrasive. For stuff that is going to take some abrasion, like claws, feet claws, teeth, I've got Rust-Oleum bar top finish, I guess you could say. It's pretty good. All my business cards are back there. Fishing wire for whiskers, or if you need to suspend anything, or it's just a handy workshop thing to have around, like if you need to hang a piece of PVC pipe for draping or something. It's pretty tough stuff. We've got a Dremel, which has seen a lot of use, as you could tell. I've got a couple different sharpening stones, because when you own, like, how many I'm up to? A dozen pairs of scissors at once, and it's $35 to sharpen a single pair of scissors at Joann's down here now. Fuck that. So instead, I'll just sharpen my own. Here's my other one. This is specifically for scissors. You put oil on one of the blades, and you go like that to smudge the oil around, and then you pull out and cut. And for the tips, if you want really good tips, you just kind of go like this, back and forth on the tips. They tell you never to go forward with pressure to keep the keep them sharp. But honestly, Fiskars are like $30 scissors, and it really does extend their life if you have heavy, heavy, heavy use. So fuck it, you know, whatever. Into the bucket with you. More sharpening stone oil. Well, my sharpening stone oil, I guess. Oh, these things. I couldn't tell you what these things are called, but if you excuse the fuzz, check it out. It's like a sandy, grady, plainy thing. Like, these are sharp blades that point only down, so you pull back and it smooths off hard foam really well. I love these things. These things are so good. Left a hot glue gun running on the side here with the tip there. Super smart choice. I did that. Good job. So, but it came in a 2-pack, so I've got a second one that isn't damaged. Super 77, the best stuff ever. Also, need a respirator with this shit. Like, not a fake respirator. Not one with the little dinky circles around it. I mean, like, fucking $50 filter respirator. Don't use this unless you have this. This will actually kill you. You will die. You will die if you use this, like, a bunch of times without a respirator, and it will definitely give you cancer. So don't. If I die of lung cancer, it's this stuff because I was retarded in my youth. So just please don't die. Learn from my example. So this stuff is super good because a lot of the spray glues, if you spray them on something with a very thin porous backing, like this is a Lycra spandex blend that I use for a lot of lining. Like, I think you could see just how sheer, like you can see straight through that. Most of the glues will soak all the way through this, and then you'll end up, like, you'll try to put a fursuit on, and if this were lining it, it'd be tacky, and it'd stick to your body hair, and your skin flakes, and your shit would get nasty real fast. Super 77 doesn't soak through, because it's made of real fucking good, super toxic cancer stuff that makes life super easy. So it just makes it super easy to lay stuff out. Like if I've got a foam piece, you know, spray the foam piece down, psh, and then this is stuck on there good, and then you can you can cut around it perfectly and not waste anything. It's also good for holding foam together, not permanently, but just to, like, you've cut out all your pieces and you want to make sure that they look good together. You Super 77 them together and make sure. Some people will say you can permanently bond stuff with Super 77. I mean, yeah, you can also, in theory, live off only Guinness, but I wouldn't do it. So, use a little hot glue, use a little rubber cement, whatever. Speaking of rubber cement, hell yeah, this stuff. Also, with this stuff, also need this. They won't sell this to you in some states. This shit's called Barge, and it is the best contact cement. They use it for holding shoes together, as just so you know what this shit is for. It's so fucking good. It'll hold foam together. It'll tear the foam before it tears the bond you make with that. In that vein, isopropyl alcohol, which you need to prepare molds. You need it to clean off surfaces, like, before you build a mold on top of your clay sculpture, you want to brush it down with isopropyl alcohol to prep it for molding. Let it dry off completely because it'll cause a reaction with some chemicals. But it only takes like 10 minutes to dry, so it's good stuff. Also, for cleaning surfaces before you want to barge them together, smoothing down softer clays. You can use it to clean off certain kinds of paint. And, you know, you work in a costume studio, you're gonna cut the fuck out of your hands. Having isopropyl nearby, just, alright, we're good, keep going. Duct tape, good to go, fuck it. Let's see, what else? These are some silicone dyes I've got here, which are kind of the consistency of pre-mixed pudding, like the pudding you buy, it's already in a container. And you use just a little bit and you mix it in with your silicone and it'll tint it any number of colors. Let's see, I've got Mod Podge and matte and gloss back there. This is also about the consistency of pudding. It's opaque white, but it dries clear. If you put it on too thick in some areas, it'll dry white, which is a good. But you can go back with a paintbrush and like water and wet it down and redistribute it. So it's a good way to make sure that you have a nice even coating of protective covering on whatever you're doing. You can, because it's kind of thick like that, you can also use it to patch small holes in foam or something. It's good stuff. And of course, anything painted, like very detailed eyelids or claws, teeth, tongues, whatever you like. Oh, the gloss stuff is really good for fake spit too. Like if you want a mouth to look really drooly, this shit is really good. If you don't have silicone on hand, this stuff is a good stand-in. Matte powder, of course, which is basically just toxic powdered sugar, because you can use powdered sugar too. Actually, I think this is just powdered sugar in here because I used it all up. Whenever you're painting silicone, it'll end up really glossy, so you keep an eye on it, and as soon as it feels dry to the touch, but like, don't wait overnight until it's actually dried. You have to, there's a very small window when you can use this stuff, otherwise it'll end up looking weird and clotted. This mats it down so that it doesn't look glossy. Like, it's good stuff. I like it. It makes it look like skin instead of like a mannequin, if you can think of skin textures in that way. Of course, a shitload of duct tape. Lucas oil, both for oiling my guns when I need to clean them, oiling my sewing machines, my serger, anything with moving parts. Oh, my dog clippers. It can also be used on scissors, but it's much thinner than the scissor blade sharpening oil is, which the scissor sharpening oil kind of clings to it so that you have time. You can get a couple of strokes in on the sharpening stone before you need to reapply. This stuff, because it's made to be used to lubricate things that move very, very fast, is much thinner. And it's environmentally friendly, which is why I like the Lucas oil. So, it's not, even if this were to, say, fall out of a bag and fucking flow into the water source, it wouldn't be too bad. Of course, you've got the plastic bottle to contend with, but what are you going to do? Everything comes in plastic. Recycle. Good stuff. You can get this from auto parts stores for like $1, and this has lasted me, like, I don't know if you could see how much I've used in there, like, not very much. This is about 5 years old, so like one $1 bottle of Lucas oil, barring if you've got like a bunch of guns you need to oil, like if it's just sewing machine and stuff, that'll last you like a good lifetime's worth of stuff. Gulf wax, because, who doesn't want to live in the 80s? This is just really good. This is literally just a fucking block of wax. You can get these from Wegmans in the mason jar aisle for, this was 50 cents because it was on sale, so I think at most it'll be $2, but this will also last you a long time. I don't use this for sculpting anything that goes onto a costume, but what I do use it for is when I have to mix my own paints. I'll use stuff like Walmart pharmaceutical containers, because you can walk in and you can be like, hey, give me just a mess of those empty pill bottles, and they'll look at you like you've got 9 heads. But if you're like, I just want them to store paint in, don't worry about it, they'll usually give them to you. But because they're poor, like, they've got a little bit of, they've got the screw top, so you just want to, like, melt some wax and seal the inner threading before you put the top on, because, if you've got a project and you've got to mix, like, I don't know, neon purple, you don't want to waste that paint, so you want to maximize the amount of shelf life it's got. So you just air seal it and use Gulf wax to do it. It's good stuff. Let's see. Sorry. Talking is thirsty work. Speaking of which, thirsty work, always have a little bit of liquor nearby. It's mead. I made it myself. It's not that bad. It's fizzy, though. It's weird. And speaking of airbrushing stuff, here are, I don't know if you could see all these. This is the bulk of my airbrushing coloring. And then the larger, oddly shaped ones are placed up here. You can see some of these weird containers that are absolutely covered in fur, Jesus Christ, uh, that I've stored paints in from the past. Oh man, that one's separated really bad. This one's really old. This one was when I made my demon character, who is a lovely demonic baby blue. Good color choice there. A long time ago. But as you can see, this is an old barbecue sauce bottle. So, like, it's sealed pretty good. And the paint in here is still liquid, even if it's separated a bit. I don't know how this one has fared. There was a lot in here, though, so that one's still pretty liquid. Perfume for no reason. Matte, airbrush medium, which is necessary for some. You can't see that because it's super bright, but I promise it says golden airbrush medium. This stuff is mandatory for certain kinds of paint. If you buy something that is specifically called, airbrush paint, it's already got this shit mixed into it. The paints I use are golden paints, they're kind of fluid acrylic, and they've got a really high pigment ratio, so you can thin them down a lot without losing any, it'll still be the same color. Because, if you thin down, a cheap paint, it'll become lighter, kind of. That's because it has a lower pigment ratio to how much fluid is in the bottle. This stuff changes the chemical composition of the paint you're using so that not only does it flow out of your airbrush easier, but it will stay permanently adhered to whatever it's sprayed onto. There's some contention about whether airbrushing fades or not. Depending on usage, fake fur, I haven't had any issues with airbrush fading on fleece because it's paint and it soaks into the fleece. With fake fur, all fake fur is plastic. It's plastic fibers that look fancy. So if you think about it in the context of a piece of clothing, let's say jeans or a shirt, and then a Ziploc bag. If you dump paint on one of those, it's going to stay. If you dump paint on the other one, it might dry a little bit, but you can get it off eventually. Because of the textural makeup of fake fur, airbrushing will stay pretty good, but over time, it will probably need to be touched up a little bit. It will fade a bit. Not so much on heads. It really is more like areas that get a lot of movement because it's imagine two plastic bags with dried paint rubbing together versus one that stays perfectly still. The dried paint's gonna stay on there pretty good, right? So on a head, it's great. It'll unless you've got it on the bridge of your costume's nose and people are always touching your nose, then that might need to be touched up. But it's pretty safe on heads and tails. It's just on bodysuits that it needs to be touched up, in my experience. Unless it's a fleece bodysuit, of course. But the airbrush medium will make it last a lot longer. I don't know. How long? Well, you can't really gauge by years. It's number of uses. But I couldn't give you a number, sorry. I don't wear my costumes very often. Maybe 2 or 3 times a year, and so far I haven't had to touch any of them up. But if you're wearing them a lot, lots of dust. Vaseline, the most important thing. Not for fapping. Not what it's here for. When you have leaks in your airbrush, because airbrushes have rubber rings inside them and to form a seal, and those seals will break down over time. Use a little bit of Vaseline, put it where the seal is, and then reassemble it, making sure that the line where the air shoots the paint out is clear of Vaseline. It can help until you can replace your airbrush. I've been doing that I've needed to replace my airbrush for about 2 years, and the Vaseline trick has helped me immensely because, there it goes, airbrushes are fucking expensive. So, I'm probably going to have to replace it this year, but until then, Vaseline works great. If you have issues with sputtering with your airbrush or with a seal being fucked up, I have a video on my YouTube channel about how to patch it up. Let's see what else. Down at the bottom here, I don't think you can see very well. Haha. Down at the bottom here, I've got an old 12-pack Pepsi can, or 12-pack of sodas from you know what I mean, soda pops. And I have filled it with old, well, not miscast, but like homeless paw pads, noses, and such, which is pretty great. I've also got saran wrap here. Saran wrap and tinfoil are pretty much mandatory things in a workshop because you're always needing to saran wrap stuff up. You're always needing to use tinfoil to build molds if you don't have dedicated mold boxes to fill in things. Let's see what else. I got more Mod Podge over here. I've got a box full of magnets, which is great because I can just stick it there and yeah, make a liar out of me. There we go. Stick it there and it'll stick. Here we go. Epoxy sculpt. This stuff's good. It's a 2-part epoxy resin. And this stuff can be used to sculpt pretty much anything. Gosh, I should have some. Here we go. Here's my hair punching tool. The handle's made out of epoxy sculpt. It's like Play-Doh for adults. You just sculpt it and then make whatever you want out of it. You can use it for eyelids, noses, teeth, tongues, depending on what color you get. This is black because I find most of what I need it for has to be black, like noses and lips and whatever. Right into the clay tools with you. Oh, heat gun, super important. This up here isn't being used for very much right now. Trimmers, this is just kind of my miscellaneous box of eyes, and then a whole mess of feathers that I'm making for a head for something right now. Yeah, so this is basically just my Tower of Doom, all the various tools I have at my disposal. They kind of have a theme. I suppose it only makes sense to me, but they're good to have. If anybody has any questions about anything... Oh, and puff paint. Super important. just in case. You never know when the 80s are coming back into vogue and you're going to need to decorate your denim jacket. So, that's been my Tower of Power. If you guys have any questions about anything on here, or about tool usage in general for costume making, don't hesitate to ask, and I'll do my best to answer it for you. This has been Artslave. Thank you for tuning in. I will talk to you guys next time.